The wind howled across the open plains of West Texas, dragging dust along the empty road like ghosts chasing something they could never catch. It was the kind of evening that swallowed sound, the kind that made you feel small beneath the endless sky. The sun was bleeding into the horizon when a rusted pickup truck rolled slowly down the gravel road, its headlights flickering on against the fading light. Behind the wheel sat a quiet cowboy named Caleb Turner. Caleb wasn't the kind of man who spoke much. Folks in town said he preferred the company of horses to people. He lived alone on a modest ranch outside a small town near Midland, working long days beneath the sun, fixing fences, tending cattle, and minding his own business. He carried grief the way other men carried wallets, close and unseen. Years earlier, Caleb had lost his wife and young daughter in a tragic accident. Since then, the laughter had drained from his home like water from a cracked bucket. He survived, but he didn't live, not really. That evening, he was heading back from town when he saw something on the side of the road. At first, he thought it was a bundle of old clothes blown by the wind. But as his truck drew closer, he slowed. It wasn't clothes. It was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, sitting on the dirt with her knees pulled tight to her chest. Her long brown hair was tangled by the wind. Her shoes were worn thin. A small backpack lay beside her like it was all she owned in the world. Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He almost kept driving. He told himself it wasn't his business, that someone else would stop, that he had enough sorrow of his own. Then she lifted her head. Their eyes met. And in that single glance, Caleb saw something he hadn't seen in years, the same fear that had once filled his daughter's eyes during a thunderstorm. He pulled over. The engine idled as he stepped out of the truck. The wind tugged at his hat. He walked slowly toward her, careful not to startle her. "You lost?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "No, sir." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Then what are you doing out here alone?" She swallowed hard. Tears shimmered but didn't fall. "She said I wasn't welcome anymore." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Who said that?" "My stepmother." The words landed heavy in the air. She explained in broken sentences how her father had passed away the year before, how her stepmother had changed afterward, how the house that once felt like home turned cold, how arguments became punishments, how love became blame. That morning, after another fight, her stepmother had thrown her backpack onto the porch and told her to leave. "She said I was a burden," the girl whispered. "She said nobody would miss me." Caleb felt something shift inside his chest, something he thought had turned to stone long ago. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily." He looked down the long, empty road. There was no house in sight for miles. No lights. No sign anyone was coming back for her. He didn't overthink it. "Get in the truck, Emily." She hesitated. Fear and hope battled in her eyes. "I won't hurt you," Caleb said softly. "But I ain't leaving you here." After a moment, she stood and climbed into the passenger seat. The drive back to the ranch was quiet. Caleb offered her a bottle of water. She held it like it was something precious. He noticed the bruises on her wrist, but didn't ask yet. When they reached the ranch, the sky was dark and filled with stars. The house was simple: wooden porch, rocking chair, warm light glowing through the windows. Emily stepped out slowly, looking unsure. "This is where you live?" she asked. "Yeah." "It's big." He almost laughed. It wasn't big, but to a girl who had just been thrown out, it must have looked like a castle. Inside, Caleb made her a sandwich and warmed up some soup. She ate carefully at first, then faster, like someone who didn't know when the next meal would come. He gave her his daughter's old bedroom. The moment he opened that door, his breath caught. The room hadn't changed in years. The bed still had the faded quilt his wife had sewn. The shelf still held old storybooks. Dust clung to forgotten memories. He hadn't let anyone step inside since the funeral. Until now. Emily walked in slowly. "It's beautiful," she said. Caleb nodded, unable to speak. That night, as the ranch grew quiet, Caleb sat on the porch staring at the stars. He knew tomorrow would bring questions. Maybe trouble. Maybe accusations. But for the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty. Inside, Emily lay in a soft bed for the first time in months. She stared at the ceiling, confused by the unfamiliar feeling in her chest. Safety. The next morning, Caleb made phone calls. He contacted the local sheriff. He explained what happened. An investigation began quietly. What they discovered shocked even the hardened officers. Emily's stepmother had reported her as runaway, only hours after throwing her out, attempting to protect herself from blame. Bruises told a deeper story. So did neighbors. Within days, authorities stepped in. Emily wasn't going back. The social worker visited the ranch. She expected to find something suspicious, an isolated cowboy with a runaway girl. Instead, she found a man who had converted half his barn into a study space, who had bought new clothes in the correct size, who stood awkwardly outside the bedroom door asking if she needed anything. She found a girl who smiled for the first time. Weeks passed. Emily began helping with small chores around the ranch. She learned how to ride a horse. She laughed when she fell into a haystack. She planted flowers near the porch. The ranch, once silent, began to breathe again. Caleb found himself cooking real meals instead of canned food. He fixed the broken swing in the yard. He listened when she talked about school. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Emily stood beside him watching the cattle. "Why did you stop for me?" she asked. Caleb thought about it. "I guess," he said slowly, "because someone should have stopped sooner." She reached for his hand, small fingers wrapping around calloused ones. Months later, after careful review and legal processes, the court made a decision. Emily needed a permanent home, and Caleb, despite his quiet nature and worn-out heart, had already given her one. The adoption day was simple. No grand ceremony, just paperwork and a handshake. But when the judge smiled and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Turner," Caleb felt something break open inside him. Not pain this time, but healing. He knelt in front of Emily. "Looks like you're stuck with me," he said softly. She threw her arms around him. "Thank you for stopping," she whispered. The cowboy who had once lived with nothing but silence now woke each morning to the sound of laughter echoing through his home. The girl who had once been told she was a burden now rode horses under wide blue skies, knowing she was chosen, not discarded. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is pulling over on a lonely road. If this story touched your heart, if you believe kindness can still change the world, take a moment right now to support this channel. Stories like this remind us that compassion is powerful, that hope is real, and that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear dusty boots and cowboy hats. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another inspiring story. Like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps bring more stories of courage, love, and second chances to life. Because somewhere out there tonight, someone is sitting on the side of the road, waiting for a stranger to stop. And maybe, just maybe, that stranger could be you.